Gene, thank you. And let's bring Senator Coburn into the conversation. Already, I know I will get complaints just for using the term. I said this gentleman. I was raised to have manners. I said this gentleman. When you do that with somebody like this who has said he pleads guilty to crimes like this, you'll get some outrage from people. What does it tell you? 7 weeks from the incident to him pleading guilty now on all 10 counts. Is that a victory for the Justice Department, or was this guy trying to make a statement?
Well, I think it's probably both. We don't have to go through a trial, but it tells you the complexity of what we're dealing with in terms of the fanaticism of certain aspects of Islam. And, you know, this is just one of many who will be attempting this.
Do you worry more about Faisal Shahzad's than you do about grand-scale attacks like 9/11 now?
I think you have to worry about them both, but I think the individuals are much more difficult for us. We have a tremendous team that's both in Homeland Security and our intelligence communities and our Border Patrol, but it's difficult at best and is not going to be easy for a long time.
There was some criticism from the right about the handling of this case in the early hours, the Miranda right question. Then, of course, he wasn't in court for a long period of time. And the Justice Department said, yes, after a period of time, we did read him his Miranda rights, but he's cooperated fully. Any sense now that this has turned out that maybe they got this one?
Well, with one caveat, I would say, we need to make sure when we have individuals like him that our intelligence agencies are brought in, because information in context is much more important than information out of context. And that has happened to us in the past where we didn't have good context for the information we were receiving. So hopefully we'll see a much more coordinated response in the future. We'll see the Miranda change for these type of individuals, which there's been some talk of that, and probably appropriately so. I don't believe we owe a Miranda warning to any terrorist that's trying to kill innocent Americans. And this individual happened to be, I believe, was a U.S. citizen as well.
That's right.
So, you know, we're in a fuzzy area of law, which we need to have some clarification on.
And another area of the law that has been challenged, it was a big development just hours before this plea in the federal court of New York. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 to uphold a provision of the Patriot Act that was challenged by groups that say if you want to give legal advice or organizing advice to a terrorist organization, as long as I'm teaching you, say, how to communicate on the internet or how to stage a peaceful protest, that should be legal as long as the advice you're giving, the help you're giving, is legal. The Supreme Court said no. If you help a terrorist organization, out of bounds. This was one Bush administration case that the Obama administration carried before the Supreme Court. Significant?
And rightly so, because it's all fungible. If they're not spending money on those type of activities, are going to be spending money trying to destroy us or kill and maim innocent Americans.
And the Solicitor General argued this case. She will be before your committee next week as the nominee for a Supreme Court seat. Is her handling of a case like this, is that something that you would look at to reflect on her?
Probably not. You know, I'm of the feeling that the Supreme Court hearings really don't help us that much. What really helps us is what they've said and done before. And what the significant outliers are in terms of what the Constitution says a Supreme Court justice ought to be about in terms of enforcing our laws, our Constitution, and our treaties.
I want to make a turn to political matters. In a moment, we're going to talk about some issues that are critically important to you about government transparency. But I want to ask you first about this whole debate about the BP oil spill fallout. A Republican on the House side, Joe Barton, last week was chastised roundly by his colleagues, threatened to lose his position as the ranking Republican on an important committee because he twice apologized to the BP CEO, Tony Hayward, and he called this new escrow fund the result of a shakedown by the White House. He also said it would be a slush fund. Well, a lot of Republicans criticized him, but today Rush Limbaugh came out and said it is the Republican leadership that's got this one wrong.
And it was a shakedown, pure and simple. And somebody had the audacity to call it what it was, and everybody's running for the hills. All you have to do is look at the polling data and the media coverage and find out what they're going to do. This is not an issue that Republicans want to go to the mattresses on regarding the election.
Rush right, or is the Republican leadership in the House right?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's the cynicism of our politics today. Nobody in either party wants to be vulnerable on any issue. And where's the real leadership? You know, what we lack is, where's the clarity of purpose? Nobody disagrees that BP is going to be held accountable. The question is how and when, and that's small matter right now in terms of the problem that we have.
But so do you have any problem with the White House negotiating this deal?
Well, I'm not sure it's fair negotiations because you're dealing with one very strong party and one very weak party in terms of public relations. But, you know, basically holding them accountable is where we want to be, and this is one way of doing it.
Senator Coburn's going to stay with us when we come back. Senator Coburn is leading an effort on Capitol Hill for transparency. If the government's going to spend money, he thinks lawmakers and you at home should have more time to study it. And if somebody in Washington wants to block a nomination, he says that shouldn't be secret. It should be right out in the open. We'll talk about that in just a moment.
$25,000 mornings, give or take, is all we humans get. We spend them on treadmills, we spend them in traffic, and if we get lucky, really lucky, it dawns on us to go spend them in a world where a simple sunrise can still be magic. 25,000 mornings. Make sure some of them are pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
Fauna, taming the wild.
So rich.
Hola, amigo. It's me, your TV. Just pulled the plug on your cable to show you something sweet. With DirecTV, get a DVR that stores twice as many shows as cable. So load it up. Sports, soaps, absolutely. Reality show marathon, not my thing, but cool. Lots of movies, why not? You got the room. Stop limiting yourself. Give them a call and check out that deal. DirecTV, it'll change your life.
Oatmeal cookies.
Hey,
What's the problem? We're shipping a package to Andy, but we can't send everything. It'd be too heavy.
Never fear, civilian.
A postal carrier?
You guys need a priority mail flat rate box, only from the Postal Service. Well, it's all over the TV.
With priority mail flat rate boxes from the Postal Service, if it fits, it ships anywhere in the country for a low flat rate.
Thanks, Mr. Postal Carrier.
Hey, fellas. Shouldn't that dog be on a leash?
Disney Pixar's Toy Story 3, only in theaters. Priority mail flat rate boxes, only from the Postal Service. A simpler way to ship.
Imagine being at 30,000 feet with a plane full of kids and you have a heart attack. That's what happened to me. I'm on an aspirin regimen now. My doctor told me it's the easiest preventative thing you can do.
Be sure to talk to your doctor before you begin an aspirin regimen.
See your doctor. Simple.
The Gulf Coast oil disaster. Every night at 10, AC360 is keeping them honest. Viewers agree. I feel we wouldn't know much of the real story without your show. Your investigative reporting is inspiring. Thanks, Anderson, for your thoughtful, honest reporting. This is what news should be. AC360. CNN Tonight, 10 Eastern.
We're back to continue our conversation with Republican Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma. And let's talk about secrets in this town. You're not a big fan of secrets in this town, and one of the efforts you're trying to lead with an amendment to the pending financial reform legislation is to root out what you call the secret spending of Washington.
You know, John, 94% of everything the Senate passed, 93 in one Congress, 94% in this, we've passed without a vote, without amendments, without. A lot of that's inconsequential. But there's a lot of consequential stuff that gets passed where the American people don't know it's passed. There's no debate on it. There's no information. It's not listed. The cost of it aren't listed. Where the funds are going to come to pay for it aren't listed. And I think that ought to be transparent for the American people. They ought to be able to see it. They ought to have time to digest it. They ought to have time to try to influence us, their elected representatives, and how we vote for that. And yet the vast majority of what we pass does not come to light in a way that would give the average American citizen input into that process.
And in terms of getting that light you want, the sunlight, the transparency, the time, and the rules that it all be posted, do you have the votes now? Financial reform is a pretty big issue to the White House. I know you don't agree with everything in the bill, but do you have the votes to get it?
I have no idea. I don't know what's going to happen on it. But, you know, we're in a process now where the American people are really awakened to what Washington's doing because the time period's so critical in our history. Not just for us, but for our kids and grandkids, especially our grandkids, the mountain of debt and the obligations that we're going to be leaving them. The American people are keyed in, and so they want to take a more active interest, and it should be there and be available to them so that they can make a decision about make a judgment about whether we were right or wrong. They love reading some of these bills online. They love to see. They want to know what it's going to cost, and they want to make a decision themselves of whether it's a priority or not.
And another thing that is done in secret often is holding up nominees. If Tom Coburn's nominated for something, or a judge is nominated, somebody's nominated for a judgeship in the Senate, because of these rules that go back generations, you can secretly go to the leadership and say, I put a hold on that nomination, and no one ever has to know. There's been a lot of screaming up at that in recent years. This is the executive calendar of the Senate for today, and there are a whole host of people in the back who've been nominated for various government jobs who've been reported out by committee who are just sitting in this calendar because people have put holds.
Well, there's 60 of them that are sitting that they don't have a hold on, but they won't allow them to go through because Mr. Becker failed his first cloture vote, and they want him. He's a negotiating point for them. So other than those 60, there are. I'd make two differential points on that. If they're a judge for a lifetime appointment, there's no problem with holding them and really studying and make sure you know what you're going to do when you vote for them. On others, if they're qualified and there's not a large problem with philosophy or intent, there's nothing wrong with publishing your holds, and I do.
Right, to the published point, I want to let you listen to one of your colleagues, Claire McCaskill, Democrat of Missouri, disagrees with you on many issues. She's left of center, you're right of center, but she says on this one, she has found common ground with you because whatever your objection, she says, put it out in plain for people to see.
And, you know, even though Tom Coburn can be very frustrating to the Senate sometimes, he uses the rules to their full advantage to advocate the positions that he believes in. I respect him for that, but he doesn't need to do it in secret. He's doing it out in the open. I may disagree with him, but I admire and respect him for doing it out in the open.
She says she has the signatures now, including yours, to get this done, to get a new rule that you can't do this in secret. Why do people do it in secret?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of reasons. If it's a nominee, for example, if it's a federal judge, maybe you haven't made your mind up yet, but you don't want to commit one way or the other. If you're forced to hold it, one of the things that's going to happen is a lot of judges aren't going to be held because you don't want to take the heat for holding somebody. You know, the whole idea would be to have an informed decision-making process on your vote. The one area I have concerns with Claire's bill is on bills. You know, if a bill comes out of a committee that I'm not on, and all of a sudden it's getting hotlined to be passed, and I say, wait a minute, I want to check this out. Well, I can't get it checked out in 48 hours. So what I'm going to do is put my name out there, and I do all the time. I've been beat up by every special interest group you can imagine. But it causes unnecessary pain for people in the Senate who are wanting to make a good decision, and consequently, if they hold it and it's published, then they're going to be defending themselves while they're really just trying to ask some questions. So there's positives and negatives to the hold system. On nominations, other than judges, I don't think there's any reason by standing up and saying that. Or even on judges, I do. If I'm going to hold them, I stand up and say, I'm holding them, and here's while I figure it out, or here's what I have a problem with.
Let me ask you before you go, the President had a celebration of Father's Day over at the White House today, and he also issued a proclamation about Father's Day. And I want to read some of it. Some of it will be like baseball and apple pie, but some of it is the first time a sitting president has said this: nurturing families come in many forms, and children may be raised by a father and mother, a single father, two fathers, a stepfather, a grandfather, or a caring guardian. He's the first sitting president to say two fathers in such a proclamation. You have any problem with that?
Well, I'm sure two fathers could probably add some benefit. I think they could add some negative as well. The key point is not the controversy about what he said, is we have hundreds of programs today because the family has broken down. And the fact, I just visited this afternoon with a gentleman from Oklahoma who won the national award for the best big brother, big sister. And what we're seeing is we're trying to fill with social programs the need for families because our families are disintegrating. And so we need to go back and not treat the symptoms, we need to start treating the disease. And all these problems are because we have policies that are undermining family formation and family sticking together. And so I would address the real issue is not the controversy in what he said, but how real the problem is in terms of keeping families together.
Senator Coburn, we appreciate your coming.
Good to be with you, John.
I'll have you back another time. A lot more to come in the program tonight. Let me walk over the magic wall and give you a look. When we come back, we'll go wall to wall because tomorrow there will